message affirmation this morning is, I both give and receive the gift of forgiveness. And indeed, forgiveness is such a great gift, and we don't think about it very often necessarily in that way. So many of us walk through life with anger or hurt or different emotions tied to something that's happened to you. Your parents slighted you, or the parents out there, something your child did or didn't do, or there's such a myriad of things. And I run into people so many times who are holding on to something like a dog with a bone. They're just not going to let go of some circumstance or situation that happened, and they think, oh, that's unforgivable. And I try to talk with people. I don't want to get too preachy with them, but and try to help people understand that they're blocking so much happiness. They're blocking their prosperity. They're blocking their happiness by being in these places where they're holding on so much to some circumstance or situation, and they just won't forgive themselves. So today I wanted to talk about that because I think it's such a big, important thing. Forgiveness is so important. Not only that we forgive others, but that we accept forgiveness, and also that we forgive ourselves, because a lot of times we're sometimes our worst villain in our own lives because we won't forgive ourselves, or some circumstance or situation happened that we just have such a hard time letting go of, and we don't necessarily find it in ourselves to forgive ourselves. And of course, this is the first Sunday of the month, and so many of you may have noticed that we went over our communion celebration, or our communion part of the service, and we're going to do that after the message because I wanted to talk about forgiveness. And many of you know that in our faith tradition, our process of communion is about forgiveness, about forgiving others, about forgiving ourselves, and about receiving forgiveness from others. So I wanted to have this time to go through this message and really plant these seeds in us so that when we do go through our communion process, we can really grasp onto and understand and give and receive that forgiveness. So it's a twofold thing. It's not something that we give, not just something that we give, it's very important, but it's also very important to receive forgiveness. As I talked about earlier, sometimes we can be the harshest critics of our own selves by not forgiving ourselves for something that happened. And also, when other people do forgive us, do we accept totally that forgiveness and move on and let go of that circumstance or situation? And a lot of times, in this modern world that we live in, especially in this day and age, people think that when you let go of something, if somebody slights you, when you forgive them and walk away, I know in my circle of friends, I'm thinking of one in particular who I know always thinks I'm such a wimp for forgiving people and just letting something go. And the reality is, because this is one of those people that, has had circumstances or situations that he just holds on to and will never let go of. And I can see that there's, this block to like true happiness in this person's life because he just won't let go of things. And he views people who let go as such a wimp. And I've tried to impress on him, that ulcer that you're getting really isn't doing the person that you're mad at any harm at all. It's only doing you harm. So when we get to a point where we can truly release and let go of the anger or the hurt or the sadness or whatever the circumstance or situation is that gave us this big block in our lives, this thing that we can't forgive, when we learn to truly let go and get rid of that, we become so free. It's such a wonderful, wonderful thing to have that freedom. So when we let go of the circumstance or situation, we feel so much better. When I was preparing for our Mother's Day message, I was going through some notes that Pastor Mike had, and they used to record all of his messages, and so we would transcribe them, and so we have this wonderful big box, so I get to look back and get ideas. And one of them was, there was a woman who had come up to Pastor Mike after Mother's Day service. And of course, during that service, we talk about, taking some time and reflecting on the love of your mother. And this woman confided in him that she just couldn't forgive her mother. I guess in her youth, there was a young man who was courting her, and she was really fond of him, but the parents didn't approve. And so eventually that fella got sent away out of her life, and she did confide that she got married, and the man that she married was a good man, and she had children, and she had a relatively happy life. but it had always been in her heart that she would probably have preferred to marry this other person. And so she always held that grudge against her mother. And over the years, as that years passed, especially when Mother's Day came around, when we're supposed to stop and reflect on the love of our mother, that bitterness was just there, and it evolved, and over the years it just got worse and worse and worse. And in that message that I was reading, Pastor Mike, he tried to counsel her, but this woman would just never let go of that. She could never forgive her mother, and it blocked her from so much happiness in her own life. And he had mentioned in the message that eventually she had passed away. And of course, in our belief system in New Thought, once she had passed over, she probably understood completely then about forgiving, and it wasn't a burden for her anymore. But the shame of it is that, when she was here in this world, she could have had such a happier life. She could have been so much freer if she had just understood that there was no percentage in holding on to this anger for her mother, especially since, the mother had passed away years and years before. Oftentimes, we do get to this place where we hold on to something, and over the years, it really gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so, when we talk, and later when we go through our communion process, I'd like everybody to try to reach back in their mind and think of something. And if you have nothing, that's wonderful, because of course that's the ideal place to be. But I find, by and large, so many people have something, some issue. Somebody hurt them, or they were slighted, or, the mom and dad did something more for one of the siblings than they did for them. And I hear so many stories about, so many different things that happen to people that they just can't let go of. And the reality is that these things happened so many years ago, there's just no percentage in holding on to it. So again, when we go through our communion process, and when we talk about the forgiving and giving and receiving forgiveness, reach into your mind and think of that circumstance or situation. And when you feel that, when you let go of it, you'll feel like the man who's carrying the big stack of stones on his back. You feel freed because you can let go of this old hurt, this old anger. As I talked about, a very important thing is not only do we need to reflect on forgiving others, forgiving, your parents or a sibling or your in-laws or whoever did whatever to you. But another big thing that we need to do is to forgive ourselves. And I'm sure a lot of us have been in a circumstance or situation. I remember when my mother passed away, feeling so riddled with guilt because there were, things that she always wanted to, go to the store, the times that I was just being a kid and annoyed and, wouldn't do something. And I remember walking around for a couple of years just filled with the guilt over these little things. And then as I reflected back and thought about it, I'm sure that she really had no desire for me to feel bad about that. And so it's good to understand, too, when we do talk about these circumstances or situations where we're walking around with some kind of guilt or we're feeling bad about something and we're not forgiving ourselves, that the person that we may have slighted probably doesn't want us walking around, especially if it's a parent or a loved one. So when we go through our communion process, think about the things too that we have in the back of our mind that we're holding on to that is not letting us be completely free because we are finding that we can't forgive ourselves. And so as you go through this, and when we start to talk about all the different things that may have happened that we want to let go of, we have so many different things. As I mentioned, parents, what they did or what they didn't do, their children, what they did or didn't do, or the in-law who never gives you credit, the siblings, the neighbors, the coworkers, the family, the friends, all of those circumstances and situations. And also think too, there's a lot of times we come into people who are so angry at God or the world. They've gotten some illness, or they feel like opportunities haven't come to them for financial success or work success or success in relationships. And so people are just mad or angry, or they don't necessarily forgive, life or God or whatever they're holding on to. So I'm sure that, again, as you stop and you think and you reflect, we all have some circumstance or some situation, there's something that we're probably holding on to, that if we can really, truly look inside ourselves and find it, and then understand that we are giving and receiving forgiveness, and we are letting it go so that we can move on and enjoy these great lives of happiness and great health and great prosperity, which, as we talk about so much in our fellowship, we know that we are created in the image of God, and God is perfect, and therefore we are perfect, and we are meant to have lives of great happiness and great health and great prosperity. And so that's why we meet here every Sunday, because we discuss all the different tools that we have to take our lives to that place. And one of the biggest and best is to give and receive the gift of forgiveness. So as you're going through the week, and hopefully everybody gets some time to set aside to reflect on things that we've talked about and have some meditation and some personal time of prayer, ask yourself, am I giving my past power over my present? Because so many of us, we do. We're holding on to something that happened. Either we're mad at somebody or something we did we're not forgiving ourselves for. But ask yourself, am I giving my past any power over my present? And if you answer yes, then look at what that is and realize that that doesn't need to happen. There's no percentage in giving so much power to something that happened in the past. So this is why we talk about our forgiveness, giving and receiving forgiveness. And it's a very important thing. And the good news is that we can both give and receive when we truly forgive and release these painful situations to God. We may think that we derive a sense of comfort or derive some sort of power by holding on to a whole old hurt or anger. However, the freedom that comes with true forgiveness gives us the greatest comfort. The freedom of letting situations go to God gives us the most powerful feelings. So let go and let God supply you with true happiness in every circumstance, in every situation.